name's Leo and I'm a boat builder and a sailor, and I'm on a mission to rebuild and restore this 109-year-old classic sailing yacht, Tally-Ho. Now, last week we built the stern assembly, which you can see behind me, and this week we're going to try and get those huge pieces of timber somehow into the boat. Alright, so this is Tom, and Tom's come from England, so we're building a little colony out here. We've got 3 Brits now. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Very welcome, and yeah, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I live in Brighton, which is on the south coast. I was trained as a cabinet maker there, been off the tools for the last couple of years, so keen to try and pick up some tools again and shape some wood.
Get back into it.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome that you're trained as a cabinet maker. That's a really good sign, so looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, using the chainsaw and the Alaska mill to cut this little piece off the end of the keel timber probably wasn't the quickest way, considering the setup, but it's meant that I've ended up with this rather nice Purple Heart offcut, which I'm sure I'll be able to use later on in the build. It's also the first time I'd actually used an Alaska mill, so I stayed a fair distance away from my line, but actually it cut very smoothly and evenly and easily, so I'm very impressed, and next time I expect I'll take it a bit closer to the line. For now though, I'm going to have to plane this down to the line and then cut the mortise in it for the tenon on the bottom of the stern post. So we've got one more volunteer now who arrived a few days ago, and he's from Belgium. My pronunciation is horrible, so I'm going to let him tell you his name.
Hi, I'm Arnaud.
Well, thanks a lot for coming, for a start.
Thank you.
Can you tell us what your background is?
Yeah, so I studied mechanical engineering and also some maritime engineering. So I'm very keen on boats. and I've never had the chance so far of to actually have practical experience on boat building. So that's very nice and great to be here and to get a hand on that. And I'm really keen on woodworking as well, so I'm really happy.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have you here. Arno is going to be here for our big frame raising party, which will be starting in about a week. So to get ready for that period, he and Finn are making the first new frame, which will be notched into the stern assembly. And we want to make that before everyone arrives, so we can iron out any difficulties with putting a frame into the stern assembly rather than the keel as we would normally do it. So this is the stern knee, which connects the after deadwood to the sternpost. But before we put it in the boat, we've got to make a slight adjustment to it to make room for the prop shaft to come out and for several bolts to all come together in quite a small area. So what we're going to do is cut out a small notch out of this part of the stern knee. And although it just looks like a fairly simple cutout, it's taken quite a lot of thinking and planning and research, because essentially to be able to know where to do this, I've had to work out what engine I want in the boat, what prop I want, and where the engine and the prop shaft are all going to go. So it's taken quite a lot of head scratching, phone calls, time online, and working on the lofting floor. But now we're going to get this cut out so we can get it in the boat. Right, so the prep took quite a bit longer than I was hoping for this, mainly because I had to spend a long time inside on the lofting floor working out where the engine's going to go, where the prop's going to go, and the prop shaft and so on, and had to work out where all the bolts were going, had to source bronze for the bolts, had to source a drill and a drilling jig, which we'll talk more about in a bit. So finally we're going to try and get some of those pieces in here this afternoon, just for a dry fit. Alright, so Tom has been very busy doing all sorts of stuff, making a load of templates and things like that, but also working on the jigs for making the Treenails. Because our old Treenail maker, although it worked well, it was really slow because the blade would overheat. We've managed to get hold of this dowel maker, and Tom's been making some jigs so we can use it.
Starting off with the dowel maker to begin with, we start off with the square stock. In order to push it all the way through, we had to design and come up with a square key so that you can continue to spin the square stock as it goes all the way through. Mm-hmm. Otherwise we end up with pieces like this with a lot of wastage on the end. In order to use the key, we have to start off with the square stock, put it in this jig, which allows us to end up with a cross section which the key will fit into, and then we can use that to push it all the way through the Veritas jig.
There we go.
Cut it to length, then we put it onto this jig which we take over to the bandsaw, and that allows us to put a slot on both ends of it which we can then wedge, and this has got a negative stop on the back so it can't go any further on the bandsaw than it needs to, which is a little bit safer than what you were doing before.
Mm-hmm. More consistent, certainly.
Yeah, you'll save your fingers.
Oi. So you can tell we've got a cabinet maker here and these very stylish jigs here, especially this, which I think looks a bit like some kind of Star Trek weapon, and very nicely annotated by Tom. It's the Badman Jig 4000. So while I've been pretty busy working on the stern assembly, and with occasional help from the guys moving stuff around, Finn has been basically training the new guys on how to make frames, which is really awesome and sort of frees up a lot of my time, because he's pretty much got the whole process down really well now. So yeah, thanks for doing that, Finn. And how are you finding it, sort of training people and being in charge of making new frames?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Yeah, it's nice working with new people and people that haven't done it before, and nice to teach them something that's new to me as well. And
yeah, I think we've got getting a really good team together so far.
So we can whack these first few tunnels through. When you're doing it, just get it like right by the edge, and then you want to put your hand through, feel in the bottom. So when you've got like that much out, stop. So dip it in the linseed oil first. Keep the slots running perpendicular to the frame.
How you do it? so these bits are actually definitely going to fall down on us.
They might not fall on you. They're going to hit the stern.
They're definitely.
I already had one fall on me yesterday, and it was fine.
Okay, cool. That's good. Oh.
2, 1, go.
Lock.
Man, we're going to lift this easy. Hi, Mum.
You alright, guys?
It's going.
Of course it's going.
Well, it's been a long week with a lot of distractions, but finally at the end of yesterday and some of today we got all these pieces into the boat, which is really awesome. The Sternpost Tenon slid right into the Mortise first time, and it all actually seems to fit together really quite well. It's now Saturday evening, so we're going to stop now, but on Monday I'm going to look at it much more closely and see if I need to trim anything. I'm going to put some clamps on and just make sure it fits really perfectly, and then I'm going to start thinking about drilling for bolts and bedding and all that sort of thing. So I'm at the Shipwrights Co-op in Port Townsend, where I've very kindly been told I can use a couple of their machines to thread some bronze rod and make the bolts to bolt the stern assembly together. So I've got my rod here, I've got my measurements from the lofting floor, so I'm going to cut it to length and I'm going to thread both ends. Hopefully they will all be going to the stern assembly very soon. So I've got all the pieces fitting in here quite nicely now, but before I drill the holes for the bolts, I've got one more little bit of fitting to do. I'm going to try and just plane a little bit off the top of the keel here, just about 1/2 mil or 1 mil. Then I'm going to be cutting out the bits of felt. I'm going to put it all back together with the felt, clamp it all up nice and tight, and then drill some holes. So the stern assembly is in, it's all felted and ready to drill. All I've got to do is chuck a couple of clamps on it and then get the drilling jig set up and drill through these pieces to put the big bronze bolts through. Now the observant out there may have noticed that the stern post looks like it's off center on the keel timber. Now that looks odd, but there is a good reason behind it. When I cut out the keel timber, I didn't know I was going to be lofting the entire boat. So I followed the shape of the old keel timber so I could fit the new one to the boat in the shape that it was. Now the old keel timber happened to be quite asymmetrical and had quite a lot more shape on one side than it did on the other. And now I've re-lofted the boat, of course, it's going to be putting it back to the original design shape, and everything will be on the center line and hopefully symmetrical. So when you bring the center line of the boat back to this position on the new keel timber, it looks as if it's quite off the center. Now that could be a big problem, except luckily when I cut out the new keel timber I cut it oversized enough that it's actually going to be fine, because a lot of this is going to be shaped down. The stern post is actually only going to be 4 inches wide here, and it will flare out to its full width on the inside of the boat, inside the rabbet. So all this shape of the keel timber will be carved out, and there is just enough timber left here for me to get the full thickness of the keel as I need it to follow the lines plan. Alright, well that's it for now, so thanks a lot for watching, and a massive thank you to everyone who's donated or otherwise supported the Tally-Ho project. It makes a huge difference and it means I'm able to take the time to make and edit these videos, so I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.